Hello, my name is Daniel Coggins with Creator Team Press, and I'm here with my colleague,
Chase, Creator Team Press.
and I just want you to introduce yourself real quick. Who are you?
Sure. I'm Jenni Olson, and I'm the writer director of The Royal Road, which is playing here at the Ashland Independent Film Festival. And I'm also a producer on the documentary The Freedom to Marry, which is also playing here. And they're also giving me the Pride Award this year, which I'm very proud of. And and it's my first time in Ashland. This is really lovely.
All right, so speaking about the Pride Award, you just came from the Sundance Film Festival. Like, how does that feel to be able to make it that big?
Um, well, being at Sundance is, a dream come true. And I actually, the truth is, I've had 5 films that have played at Sundance, and it never gets old. uh, and I just flew in this afternoon, and Ashland reminds me a little bit of Sundance. Like, you have this sense of kind of being, out in the nice naturey, very peaceful. Although Ashland's a little more peaceful than Sundance. Um, but I make experimental films, 16 millimeter urban landscape films with voiceover. And so my films play in kind of the smaller sections at festivals, including Sundance. So, I mean, obviously it's exciting to be at Sundance, but it's not like I'm playing at the big, huge venues where you're walking down the street and people are like, oh my God, it's Jenni Olson. They don't do that. um, but yeah.
So in our film class, we are filming a movie, and I find it very chaotic to get to a final product because it's really disorientating. Your style of filming, it's unique. It's you film and write at the same time. I'd really find that hard to come to a finished product that way. What would be some advice you could give to a new filmmaker trying to use that kind of style?
So my style, partly I arrived at my style, which is I, uh, it's literally just static landscapes with a static camera, long takes, and then I write separate voiceover, which I record separately. I came to that style partly because I didn't want to work with actors. And I didn't want to work with like a big crew where you have to tell everybody what to do, and you're like, oh, there's the camera and the lights and the actors and the dialogue that they have to read, and and I just thought I would end up making a really bad movie because I just don't have all those skills. And I mean, I just did a little presentation at the South Medford High for the Gay Straight Alliance there, and I was saying, one piece of advice is to, have the things that you want to say that you feel passionately about, and then, be creative about your mode of storytelling. And I mean, I'm curious, are you making a narrative film or a documentary film?
We are making a narrative film, and it's getting along, but we're getting there.
So one of the other things that I've done over the years is festival programming, and so I've seen literally thousands of films, features, and shorts and documentaries. And one of the things with especially narrative shorts, where you might not have as many skills as, say, Steven Spielberg, um, things like utilizing voiceover, especially if you like mess up a scene, or like you have like sound problems on a scene, you can, be like, oh, that's really bad. How can we fix this? Or putting in like slates, for to be like, okay, how are we getting from that scene to that scene, and we didn't, shoot everything right, or um, anyway, like not, just thinking outside the box to be creative of how to solve those problems. And I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah,
I can
yeah,
take that.
yeah.
So you talked about stuff that uh, feels special to you. Could you talk about some of the landscapes that you shoot that feel special to you, like how houses look like for you and how they feel for you?
I have a great fondness for particularly kind of broken down buildings or decaying landscapes, industrial landscapes, and also things that don't have, or just things that don't have contemporary indicators in them of like billboards or even things like street signs that like the like bright yellow like pedestrian signs or like things that just look more contemporary. Like I like to shoot things where you could look at it and think like, wow, that could have looked like that like 50 years ago. And then having these really long takes where it just kind of gives room for you as a viewer to have a lot of feelings and have this quiet space, which we don't have enough of, I think.
So the way you go about your films, you film them kind of with like a dynamic relationship with the viewer and the film itself. They kind of place themselves in a unique way to kind of view the space that's going on. Um, what inspired you to do that? To use that kind of
The style of shooting. So I call my filmmaking landscape filmmaking, and it's very tiny kind of subgenre of. It's a subgenre combination of documentary and experimental film, and it's also kind of essay film, like like an essay where you're expressing a point of view about something, except in film. Uh, and the kind of inspirations that I've had are there's a filmmaker called William E. Jones who made work in the early 90s, and he made a film called Massillon that was about growing up gay in Massillon, Ohio. And I saw that in 1991, and it was just revelatory. And I was like, that's the movie that I want to make. And his shots were even longer, and there's really nothing happening. It's like, oh, here's like an empty cornfield for 3 minutes. And but it was beautiful and meditative and very emotional and very personal and kind of combination of personal and political story. And I just when I saw that film, I thought, I know that's the kind of filmmaking that I want to do. And there are a few other filmmakers. James Benning makes landscape films. I know I'm forgetting. Patrick Keeler, who's a British landscape filmmaker. It's a very small genre, but yeah.
okay. So talking about how you do the landscape filmmaking, you connect your films together through kind of little subtle things, like maybe it's like a faded advertisement on a brick building, or down at the dry docks in Sacramento, the Pier 70, the cranes. What is there like any symbolism behind those connections?
Yeah, I mean, well, in the case of in the Royal Road, there's the images of the dry docks in San Francisco, actually, and in that case, like I use that landscape, and I talk a lot about the history of Alfred Hitchcock's film Vertigo, which was shot in San Francisco and literally has a scene that was shot at the San Francisco dry docks. And so I make a lot of connections between different topics, whether they're historical reflections on, in that case, I'm very interested in Hollywood film history, so I throw in a lot of that kind of stuff. And then my own just personal living in San Francisco, these are the landscapes that I see every day. And so I think, I don't know if that answers your question. That's the kind of my personal connection. I think, the other thing that I'm interested in is telling kind of queer stories, and um, I always feel like it's kind of oversimplified to say, oh, this is a lesbian film. It's like my voice is as a butch lesbian character, if you will, and I do actually kind of think of myself as a character, um, and so it is a lesbian film in that sense, but it isn't like, I mean, it's very unconventional. So it's not like, oh right, and then, girl meets girl and they live happily ever after. Uh, uh, and so, but it is like an essay in the sense that, yeah, I'm kind of talking about things that I'm interested in, and they are very far flung from the history of Hitchcock's Vertigo to the history of the Mexican American War, and just all the kind of random things that I'm interested in. So
Okay, so you've had a lot of accomplishments over the years in making your films, and you've become a really influential piece in the whole LGBT community. And did you ever think that you would make it to this spot and be such a influence on people?
that's a really great question. And good job. Really. So when I walked in here to your student union, I'm feeling very emotional today. So I came out in 1986. I was a student at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, and the way that I came out was by reading a book called The Celluloid Closet that was about the history of homosexuality on screen, and mainly, which was not a very positive history. It was kind of a pretty terrible history, and I read about the films, and I thought, like, oh, I really want to see all these movies, and this is a way to connect with who I think I am, and to feel a little less alone. And this was a long time ago. We didn't have like a zillion gay characters on TV, and it's like every show on TV has like the gay character, right? And it was hard, and it was hard to come out, and it was so at the student union, I went to the film studies thing at the student union, and I said, I want to do a gay film series, and they were like, okay, here's this like shelf full of catalogs. If you can find the films, you can show them. And I feel like it wasn't a sense of, I feel like I had no sense of what I was doing being in any way like a leadership thing, or like, oh, I'm doing this important thing. It was like I was just compelled. It was like, I can't not do this. And anyway, it was this massive thing. Like, there were hundreds of people that came to the film series, and it was what enabled me to come out. And I got the President's Student Leadership Award, but all of that like felt very kind of lost on me, because I just felt like, I don't know, I'm just doing what I need to do to survive. And I still feel very humble that I mean, it's lovely that they're giving me this Pride Award thing, and that I have done many things that I feel proud of and are making a difference for people. But anyway, so I talked earlier today to the kids at the high school, it's so moving to me to see the courage of your generation, and you know what queer kids and straight kids, and that you're gonna make the world a better place. And anyway, so you're the ones who deserve the awards. Yeah.
So speaking about how in this generation we're making a difference and stuff, the NCAA recently they pulled the championship game out of North Carolina. Do you want to maybe give some insight about how you feel about how that whole situation turned out?
I've been trying to keep up with the nuances of it. I mean, obviously, it was really horrible, the whole bathroom bill in North Carolina in the first place, and then kind of awesome that, there was so much backlash, and that folks like the NCAA and whoever, all zillion other companies said they wouldn't do business there or do events or do concerts or shows, all that. And that, it's been this like really kind of educational opportunity for people to stand up all over the country, all over the world, and say, like, actually, we're going to stand against discrimination and stand with trans people. And so, that's been a good thing. But I feel like I read, like, a little tiny version of the my understanding is that the latest development, whatever the new version of the bill isn't really strong enough, and that there still is the opportunity for. Does this ring a bell with you? I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's like 4 years where the trans community isn't really protected.
Yeah.
There's the 4 years that the transgender community isn't protected.
Yeah. And so, I'm reminded actually of, years ago there was an LGBT anti-discrimination bill was supposed to be a federal piece that the feeling was like, oh, well, if you just take the trans part out of it, then we can get it passed. And those of us who on the leftier left were like, you can't just say like, oh, okay, well, let's get it passed and we'll just throw the trans people under the bus and like, too bad, You have to say like, no, until all of us are free, none of us are free. Like, if you're going to just say you're going to do this just for the lesbian and gay people, but not the trans people, that is not enough. Like, that isn't, you can't compromise on equality. Anyway, so it reminds me of that.
Well, reading your interviews, we've seen that you have talked about a third movie that you're planning on making, but that you're struggling to have the time to make it as well. Do you think you can have any insight for us to tell us when that will come out, or what that certain movie is about, what you're planning to write about?
Thank you so much for asking about that. I made a film called The Joy of Life about 10 years ago that was kind of the first part of a trilogy of films. And then The Royal Road, my current film. And the next film is called The Quiet World. And it's very similar, 16 millimeter landscapes and voiceover. And I am writing, because writing doesn't cost money. Unfortunately, filmmaking is expensive. And I have a wife and 2 kids, one of whom is about to go off to college, which also costs money. And, one has to be a responsible parent. So I have no idea when I will be able to raise enough money or, not be working a job to be able to actually make another film. But if there's anyone watching who wants to be an executive producer for $100,000 or so, it could happen quite swiftly. But yeah, thank you. It's a great question.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to personally thank you for letting us interview and taking your time. I really appreciate it.